we think that that is the best way. You need some traction after these studies are done, because I mean, trust me, I've been in many communities where they've gone, I've been 15 of these studies over the last 30 years I've been in, government, and many of them end up on shelves. So we talked, with Bart about this and some of the other village representatives, that we wanted to make sure there were near-term implementable recommendations. And now we'll, for example, we'd be able to widen the neighborhood streets to allow parking and access and kind of the throughput to be better. No, the answer, I'll just go out on a limb and say no. We're not going to, move sidewalks and eminent domain land to widen neighborhood streets. But there are ways to, improve, the use of those streets. And so that's what we're going to be working on. And I know Steve, within the traffic analysis and the mobility analysis, there are recommendations that the Department of Public Works can take and put it into an action plan and work them into the budget and hopefully in the near-term budget and get those changes made.
And to follow up on that,
the police department has, sure.
Just from a staff perspective on Rachel's comment about maybe there being some pessimism and or, wait and see kind of thing, I get a similar impression from people that they're waiting for the recommendations to come out, because not everyone understands that there is a problem because it's not a problem to them. And so I feel like there's a lot of individual perspectives looking forward to seeing what the more comprehensive, issues or recommendations are going to be. So just in terms of these town halls and the online comments too, I think I've gotten a lot of people who told me like they're really interested in the topic but don't necessarily have a problem to share, but they understand that other people have problems. And so I think the recommendations portion of this, or the identification and recommendations portion of it, might get people more excited about what it is this project is doing. And so just from a staff perspective, even internally, I get other managers and department heads asking me like, well, do we have any concept of what they're gonna recommend in this area? And at this point, I just reiterated, if you have particular issues or things that you would like to share, feel free to do that. But most people are kind of under the impression like Shorewood has been what Shorewood is for, so long, and there hasn't been that drastic of change for a lot of people. So identifying the problems hasn't been as easy as perhaps discussing the recommendations. So just to follow up on Rachel's point, I get that same kind of, perspective, but I do think that the process has identified several things that comprehensively probably should be addressed. And so I'm looking forward to that being the next, the next step of this process. So I'm
Well,
optimistic.
that's why we're doing this whole thing.
Correct.
So, to the people who think nothing's gonna come of it, well, too bad. I mean, what do you
And if
say,
there-
what do you say to that? I don't know. That's why
And
we're
it's
doing the
hard,
study.
it's hard, right? And we deal with that bike and ped all the time. Someone will come and say, I want a stop sign at my corner. Why are you waiting for some kid to die before you put this in there? And the perspective is that, everyone in the village comes and wants a stop sign at their corner, but they think that we have too many stop signs in Typical Village, right? So how do you make that person feel heard and optimistic about the process, that their input was considered and that it was prioritized for the best overall good? When their request is, are you going to wait for a kid to be killed, right? Which, of course, nobody wants that to happen. But so, I'm sensitive to the fact that that's a challenge. I just want to convey that, we heard some people say that they weren't sure that change was going to happen. But of course, if you don't participate, change won't happen. So
Well, it's a
I
little
would
premature to even
It's-
say something
it's-
like that because the recommendations
totally
haven't
agree.
even come out.
I totally agree.
I think we should have that discussion once there are recommendations, and then if nothing happens, then we can
Well,
discuss
yeah,
why
and part
nothing
of that is
happened.
our charge, right, to make sure that something does
Yeah,
happen. And by
exactly.
including all the comments, we're showing that we listened, and so I think what I'm hearing is encouraging. I just wanted to let you know some of the tone that we heard. Overall, it
Sure.
was positive. Overall, I got a lot of responses like what you told me. Like, I'm curious to see what happens, and it was almost like they were waiting to see if the changes that were recommended would negatively impact them, because they were kind of used to how things were. So they were curious to see what the changes were. But
Well, and it's interesting because some of the recommendations, when we look at goals of simplification or accessibility or standardization, improved enforcement and practices, those may not directly impact somebody on a daily basis, but tangentially they're related to improving access and movement within this very densely populated area. So to some people, simplification on how to get a permit or improved access to supply for overnight parking, that is a big win. And that's all they were looking for. They were one subject participants. Others came with more of a broad view of, how is this going to improve our community as a whole? Very general statement. While others, were very focused on either, preserving the policies. Because one of the questions we asked is, what isn't broken? What works that you do not want to see changed, and why? And those comments were insightful. Some people said, hey, once the timelines came up around our home, it changed the environment. It improved the environment. There weren't as many cars on the street for as long a period of time, and they didn't mind people parking there, but they just didn't like people leaving their cars there for days. So little movements that have happened in the past in policy they were well received, and they didn't want to see those change. So we took all those to heart. We looked at them on the maps. We looked at them in relation to other policies to make sure there aren't any unintended consequences, or there is a policy implemented that would negate the gains that were achieved from previous policies. It's like looking at a chessboard. You need to make sure that you're not creating a situation that negatively impacts you 3 moves down the road.
Right.
And so looking at simplification, accessibility, standardization, and enforcement are kind of the pillars of the goals that we had established for this work.
I think that's great. It's a good summary of those 4 key themes of what we've heard throughout the town halls and focus groups. So if there's anything else on your end to share, or the tags group end to share, I think otherwise I'm happy with that as the summary of how that's all gone. And I think we've tried our best to get as many voices heard as we have been able to. So I'm happy with that, and eager for the report to get more conversations, going and working towards implementing and getting that on the table. So
Correct.
So, and
You want to move to task, or
I just have
sorry,
a
go
question.
ahead.
Yeah, so I heard online that there was a pedestrian, or actually a cyclist car collision near the high school yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was a short
Did-
intermediate school student got struck by a car on the way.
Right, and
Cadwell and Oakland.
yeah, and so I was just curious if those kinds of events, as they happen during this analysis, if they're kept aware of those kinds of things?
I just heard about it today at lunch, and I was going to
Okay.
follow up with the police chief on it, and I would have forwarded to. So anything that I've heard, I've
It's
forwarded,
true.
or anything that someone's forwarded to me, I have forwarded. But yeah, I did hear that this morning, or this afternoon at lunch. I just never got around to asking the police chief if there was anything shareable on that yet.
Okay.
Do we know the location? Was it at the crosswalk for the right turn to go south on Oakland?
Correct.
Okay. And I mean, that's a deadly spot. And me and my wife, I didn't even know where it was, but I saw the
Little
cop car there,
island?
and I go, I bet $100 it happened at that little crosswalk for the right turn, because people like to just. Yeah.
I'm gonna say though that I think that people have a tendency to always be like, because it's a red arrow, on a red light that's a no turn on red at that particular space, but it's not always the car's fault.
Yeah,
True.
Well,
True,
yeah.
and that's why I brought it up, because I know there's gonna be an official report and there was an investigation.
So yeah, I didn't want to send anything along until I had some sort of.
Sorry. Forgot
Which is
what I said.
fine. Which is fine.
The point is,
Thanks for bringing it up
Sorry.
before we were ready.
there was
Zero
another car bike collision at that
Yeah.
intersection.
And then, just one
Just so
other
everybody
question.
knows, the student's doing fine.
Okay, good.
What?
Good.
The student's fine.
Was that low velocity, I would imagine? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then my other question, just to dispel what I saw in that same comment thread, it was very long. Someone was told, they said, by a consultant during one of the open meetings that the study had not occurred when students were in school. And I know we had talked about this as a group the very first time we met to confirm that was happening. and that if the study went into the
Correct.
fall during school, it would happen during that period as well. So I just wanted to ask the question. I promised I would ask again and report back to the group. So can
No,
you confirm that
absolutely.
we
So-
did study
So
during school?
when the project, oops, I'm sorry.
Can you confirm that the observations have happened during the school year?
Yes.
Okay.
Prior to the real diving deep into this project, when we were authorized to proceed, it was near the end of last year's academic period, and so we had people in the field at that point in time, and we rushed to make sure that we were able to document that.
Okay.
And meeting with the principals, getting input on some of the specific issues that are going on, and areas for improvement around the school and then we're in school session now. We're putting the draft together, but we want to make sure that review of the draft, we captured it accurately, and if it's intensified or if there are new issues that have cropped up, there is time, and we want to make sure this is right, not necessarily fast and wrong. We want it to be right, and if we have to wait a week, I'll ask for Bart's forgiveness, and we'll go observe and
Well,
talk
did you-
to the
did
appropriate
you-
people as well.
Did you observe enough in the fall? Or the spring, excuse me? Because if you did, then I think we're done. But if you didn't, then you should probably observe
Yeah.
more.
Well, and I don't think the
I
thread, I
think-
don't think the
I-
thread brought to light any new concerns, but it was in relation to this bicycle
Sure.
accident, and then there was additional conversation, things go on social media. So I told them that I would follow up with you as the consultants and the root source of the issue and confirm it, and you just did. So I think, I can ask them if they have any
Great.
specific concerns, otherwise the issue's dead. Right?
Sweet.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, cool,
Yep.
thank you.
All right, excellent. Well, as far as the status update on the draft report, the report really has two sections. There's parking analysis, and it's a parking needs and policy analysis, and then there's the transportation and traffic element. The parking analysis draft is complete. We are working on the traffic piece, and one thing that we need to do, we're going to submit it together as one document under one cover. There are the parking and traffic go together. They can be viewed at times as separate, but we want to make sure that people understand the relationship, and so Steve is working on the transportation section, and moving into the next item, the schedule. We're looking to have a draft to Bart late next week. Bart's going to review the draft and then provide us with any comments. Bart's responsibility as our project lead contact, he's going to provide feedback initially, and he has done that already on some ADA recommendations that we provided, and with the village manager and appropriation of space on street for ADA use. And then all just continual feedback throughout this process. So he's going to review the document, and then it'll go out to the groups for comment, and then presentation to the community. So there'll be chances for this group to fulfill the goal, which is to be representatives of various interests within the community. That's why you guys were assembled. And so getting your fingerprints on the draft and communicating to us any feedback, that's really important, because we want to be able to go before the community and present and make sure that recommendations have been vetted. Once again, I'll highlight that not everybody's going to be happy. We had some requests to eliminate on-street parking entirely from the community, no parking on street ever.
I remember that issue.
That's not. Pardon?
I remember that issue way back when, that we turned
Yeah.
that around.
I don't believe that that's going to end up in the short list of recommendations, but, for the most part, we are, listening and responding accordingly. And, we're looking at some other best practices that maybe weren't brought up in the focus groups or the town hall meetings, but some best practices as far as the scooters. We have cities around the country that are 2 steps ahead of Shorewood and how to deal with them. And so we'll have information that wasn't necessarily discussed by the community. It was brought up, on a very high level, but we'll be able to provide some some recommendations on how to proceed going forward in those areas.
Yeah, the Bike and Ped Committee considered scooters 2 months ago, and we sent some recommendations and thoughts to the board, which I'm sure has been shared with you, but if not, let me know. But I'd love to see that feedback.
Great. Yeah.
Are we going to, is the
Yeah, we-
committee gonna see the draft, or are you gonna review the draft
Yeah, so-
first, and how's that gonna
Yeah,
work?
so to Phil's point, I would like to see the draft first, just to make sure that I'm comfortable with sharing with other people before I get all the comments coming to me specifically. So I've asked for at least a week to, review it myself. And then, I'll give him some feedback, and presuming it's, acceptable to share at that point, I would be sending it to the advisory group specifically. And so at that point, you'll have it, at that point, it's a public document, so other people will be looking and sharing it as well, so.
So that's like 3 weeks from now, maybe?
Yeah, so you said end of next week, Phil, you're looking at it, so then I would take the first week of
Correct.
October in there, so probably maybe the Friday after that, if that's, whatever that is, so 2 to 3 weeks. Is my expectation or hope on being able to provide those answers to people that are eagerly asking for them, but I did want the week at least just so I knew it was in there before I got all the phone calls saying, did you see that section, and I hadn't seen it yet, so. So they've agreed to accommodate that request, and so that's the current plan.
Okay.
All right, are there any other questions or comments? I want to be respectful of everybody's time here.
And I'll just say, to follow up on that, so I would expect for a week or two then for, back and forth between this group or the people that have seen it. But we do wanna have a town hall. We were hoping for early October. At this point, we're, not gonna make that schedule in terms of being able to compile and prepare everything. So I know there's a week in October that the group is not available because you guys are having some, internal, meetings.
Correct.
So it might get pushed to late October, early November. From my perspective, to Phil's point before, I'd rather have a report that is properly vetted and contains everything we're looking for than to rush something out the door.